This is Discovering the Scriptures with Dr. Peter John Parisis. We're now in Daniel chapter 2, verse 24, reading the verse that we're studying from the King James Bible. Quote, "Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation." Unquote. Now, let's compare this with the Young's literal translation. Quote, "Therefore Daniel hath gone up unto Arioch, whom the king hath appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He hath gone, and thus hath said to him, The wise men of Babylon thou dost not destroy. Bring me up before the king, and the interpretation to the king I do show." Unquote. Now, we always want to read the verse in context. This verse happens to be its own paragraph from what we see in the scriptures. So, let's give you a background of what's taking place. Nebuchadnezzar has had a dream. He can't remember it. He called the wise men, the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, everybody that was considered wise, he brought before himself to tell him the dream. They were pretty arrogant about the whole thing. And then he said, "Well, tell me the dream and the interpretation." And they said, "Well, tell us the dream and we'll tell you that." Well, he said, "I don't believe that you're going to do so. I think you're going to try to deceive me. So you tell me the dream and the interpretation," because he couldn't remember it. So they didn't, and so the king started to kill the wise men. When they came to Daniel and his friends, Daniel asked, "What's going on? Why is this so hasty?" Arioch told him what was going on. This whole story in chapter 2, Daniel stopped writing in Hebrew and started writing in Aramaic, the court's language. Only one time do we see him so far switching back from the court's language to his Hebrew tongue, and that's when he refers to his three friends. He refers to them by their Hebrew name, not by their Chaldean given name by the king. Then he's writing back again in Aramaic. So then Daniel goes to the king and asks permission to have time, and he will show him the dream and the interpretation. Then Daniel goes back to his buddies, Mishael, I always want to say Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because that's how we know them. But he actually names them as Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah in verse 17. And they go to prayer to God about this whole situation, seeking that God would have mercy to help them get the dream and the interpretation so that their lives will be spared and they will stop the killing of these other people. And God does now grant Daniel the dream in a night vision and the interpretation of it. And then Daniel goes and starts praising the Lord for it. Now we have in verse 24, Daniel goes to Arioch, that's the name of the position of the chief of the guards. He goes to Arioch, and then he wants to talk to the king now to tell him the dream and the interpretation. That's where we are with this verse. "Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation." So that's this verse here. Now we've already started seeing in this storyline things relating to sayings from Abraham. We have enlightenment of the Messiah. It starts to be talked about in this chapter. So there's some nuggets going on besides what's taking place right on cue. And the stuff about the Messiah that started taking place here, that was being foretold, is written in Aramaic, not Hebrew. So this shows us that the Messiah is also for the Gentiles, not just the Jews. Now, what I want to do is go ahead and look at the Interlinear Bible, and we're going to look at the raw translation of this verse before we parse it from Aramaic into English. This is the raw translation. Quote, King thee had appointed whom? Arioch, now it's a noun proper, to went Daniel. Therefore, according to, therefore, of Babylon, the wise men, to him said, and thus he went of Babylon, the wise men, to destroy. I will tell the king and the interpretation thee, king thee, before, take me to destroy not. So that's the raw translation. It's important to look at this sometimes because when you look at the raw translation in the interlinear Bible, you can find things like Arioch, for instance. It's a proper masculine singular noun. So we do know that that is like a title like manager of a hotel. That's not the guy's name or the lady's name. It's the name of the position. So there's certain things that you can tell when you're looking at the interlinear library of what's going on. Like the wise men. It's not the wise men, it's the wise. But yet it is a preposition noun, masculine plural construction. So when they're talking about the wise, in this one it's masculine, not neutral or feminine, so we know they're talking about the wise men. So you can insert men in here, which they did in these translations. Now, I'm going to go back and look at the Geneva version. I'm going to read that one to you right now so you can see that one. Geneva version, quote, Therefore Daniel went unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babel. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babel, but bring me before the king, and I will declare unto the king the interpretation, unquote. Now let's go ahead and parse out this verse and see what we can get from it. Daniel 2:24, parsing the verse, we start with this. Therefore, Daniel went in. Now let's parse out the Aramaic word for this. It's a PL stem, which is a casual action of the active voice, and it's perfect, so it means it's a completed action. He casually went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained. Now let's parse out this word for had ordained. It's another casual action of the active voice, and it's perfect, so it's completed. To destroy, let's look at that. Now this one is an aphiel, which is a causative conjunction, and it's an infinitive, so it's an ing. So causing him to destroy, and he's destroying. So Arioch is destroying the wise men still of Babylon. He went, let's go ahead and parse that out. That's a PL, perfect, which means that it's a casual action, and it's perfect, which means that it's complete. And continuing on, he said, let's parse that out. That is a PL perfect, so it's another casual, and it's a perfect one. So it's completed. Continuing, thus unto him, destroy. Now let's go ahead and look at that. APL, stem, and it's an imperfect aspect. So it's a casual conjunction, and so basically it's like, well, imperfect means it's not done yet, so we have a process of being incomplete. So it's a causative conjunction, but it's yet incomplete because he, of course, has not finished the job yet. I think he might have slacked up because if there's someone who can show the dream to the king, he doesn't need to keep killing as many or as fast. Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in. So let's go ahead and look at this. Let's parse this out. Bring me in is an APL stem. So you know what that means is a causative conjunction. And it is an imperative aspect, which indicates an order or a command. So bring me in before the king. So he's commanding to be brought in before the king now. And I will show. Now this is a PL stem, and it is an imperfect aspect. So we have here Also, an intensive or intentional action that is not been complete yet. So I will show intensively unto the king the interpretation. So we have something that I'm sure Arioch, the captain of the guards, is more than pleased to have right now going on. So let's see what we have as far as the interpretations and commentaries on this. And I will look at those. And let's see what John Gill has to write on this. Quote, Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, into his apartment at court, or wherever he was in quest of the wise men, of which Daniel had knowledge. This he did as soon as the secret was revealed to him, though not before he had given thanks to God, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. This is a description of Arioch from the office assigned him by King Nebuchadnezzar, who had appointed him to see this his will and pleasure accomplished. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon, that is, do not go on to destroy them, for some he had destroyed. This Daniel said, not from any special love he bore them, though some of them might have been his preceptors in the language and literature of the Chaldeans, and so he might have a natural affection for them, and indeed might say this out of common humanity. But this did not arise from any love he had to the wicked arts which he abhorred, but from love of justice. For however wise these men might be, or however deserving of death on other accounts, yet not on this account, for not doing what was impossible for them to do. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation, that is, of the dream. And that itself, by this it seems that Daniel, as yet, was not so well known at court, nor of so much esteem and authority there, as to go in to the king of himself, but needed one to introduce him, and which confirms what has been supposed in Daniel chapter 2, verse 16. Reading from the King James Bible, quote, Then Daniel went in and desired the king that he would give him time, and that he would show the king the interpretation, unquote. Now this ends John Gill's commentary of the Bible on Daniel 2:24. So as we have it here, John Gill gives us some insight that I didn't even think about. Daniel's teachers for the last 2 years have been the wise men. Some of them, not all of them, teaching him and his fellow children of Judah, and the prince's children from Judah, and the royal children from Judah. They've been teaching them for the last 2 years. They still have a year left to go before they're presented before the king. So he's had some affection towards some of these, I am sure, just like I did when I attended seminary, and I learned from some very wise men, some of which I wouldn't give you 2 bits for, other of which I have seen their faith in God and seen them stand on it. We had a time at the seminary when the seminary was going under, and how fast did the people flee from the seminary to go get paying jobs elsewhere, instead of standing on the grounds in which they taught that believe in God, ask for your needs, and trust God to supply. They hurried and took off. Even some of the most esteemed, in my eyes, professors took off. And yet when I asked one of the professors, why is it you don't stand on your faith in God and ask God to supply your needs, why you keep the seminary open? For obviously it's God's will that it stays open, though it has been mismanaged by several men in its past. And thus, a small group of them decided to go ahead and trust God for their needs, to pay their bills, their mortgage, everything, while looking to God to keep the seminary open, to which he did. God brought a wonderful man of God in to bring others in and to do the job that was necessary to keep the seminary open. And the professors that stayed there, I had more esteem for than even previously, because now these were men and women of God who were living by faith, trusting God to supply their every need. And he did. Now the seminary is more successful than it was. And those people are still there, except for one who retired and took off immediately back to Africa as a missionary with his wife, both of them very senior in age, and yet following God's direction and will. So I have esteem for those professors who were true to God's word, and I still hold them up. Would I try to prevent them from being killed? Most definitely. I would definitely go to God. I would definitely fast. I would definitely pray to try to protect them. And thus here we have Daniel and his three friends doing the same thing. It's a natural affection. Think about it. Who would you protect that has taught you? Who was your favorite teacher? Who was your favorite relative who taught you things? And that's what we have going on here. Well, we have more to find as we go about this chapter, and we have more to find out about the last times in the Messiah also as we go through. May God richly bless you as you go along your way studying the Scriptures. Please remember to tell others about this, especially ministers, priests, pastors, lay people, elders. Tell them. And then that way they can go through the Bible verse by verse just like we are to find out what is here so they can form their own doctrines, opinions, and gain insights on how to walk closer to God and enjoy the Bible even more. Please go below and hit the like and subscribe button. And if there's a little bell symbol, I'd hit that so it notifies you as soon as possible. If you accidentally click on these ads, that's okay. I do make a little bit of money off from each one of those. It's minuscule, but it does add up. And I would appreciate the support so I can go ahead and spend more time doing this. So if you can click an ad or two here and there, it'd be greatly appreciated. And of course, there are t-shirts if you want them down below to show that you're supporting this ministry. God bless you, and please keep me in your prayers. And always remember to pray and ask God for wisdom, knowledge, and insight into the Scriptures as you approach them and meditate them through the day. God bless you. Amen.